Well, good evening and welcome to this month's edition of The Edge. As always, I'm your host, Trevor Lewington. Thanks so much for spending time with me. On the third Thursday of every month, we're talking to community and business leaders, of course, people that are having a real impact on Southern Alberta and beyond. And my hope is always that you're going to learn something that can help you grow your business, grow your community, or perhaps just help you build yourself. And so tonight, I'm super excited to be joined by Jennifer Tribble, Executive Director for MyCityCare. And I just really appreciate you spending the time to be with me tonight.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. I love doing this kind of stuff, and it's awesome to, just to let everyone know a little bit more about us and what we're doing.
Awesome.
And this is a great
thank
honor.
you for that. Can you perhaps talk to us a little bit about how MyCityCare got started? Because we'll get into what all the great things it does, but where did this thing come from?
Yeah, so in 2016, actually, just to back it up a little bit further, me and my husband moved here 13 years ago from sunny British Columbia. We were in the Okanagan.
So you chose
yes.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Left the sunny Okanagan, moved to Lethbridge, Alberta, and found ourselves here. My husband started a job at actually Parallel Church at the time, doing youth and music. And in 2016, our leadership team at the church and our pastor wanted to start something that was going to help our community. So they actually went to India, and they were at a conference, and there was a guy who was speaking and sharing about just humanity's greatest needs, and he was talking about humanity's 6 greatest needs. So food, clothing, water, shelter, justice, health, and
all those essential elements,
very essential basic elements, and that it's just a universal need no matter where you go around the world, that those needs exist. And he kind of was inspired by that. He texted us back home and was like, okay, I think I have a framework. Can you build something? And so I basically went to work and started to put together a framework and programs around the 6 areas of human need. And at the time, we didn't know what it was going to look like. We just kind of started, and we were like, okay, it's going to be probably the simplest to start with clothing. Everyone's got clothes in their closet to donate, so why don't we do these pop-up street store clothing giveaway events?
Okay.
So we started with that, and it just picked up steam from there, and we started picking up different community needs as we went, and everything from food programs to helping with school lunch programs. We just found needs and found gaps in the community, and just jumped in, and we were like, we can do something. And then from that, we've grown to the organization we are today.
That's really, really cool. I mean, it's interesting that the inspiration came from India. And so there was the early days, and you've grown now to multiple locations. So walk us through a little bit about the more recent history and that growth. Obviously, the sad part is the growth comes from the need.
It's true. And it's one of those things where when you're working in nonprofit, and I even had a conversation about it today, it's like, how do you measure your results? And how do you know you're winning in social services? Because the numbers going up isn't a win, really. Like, that's not a win. And like, ideally, the numbers going down would be a win. So how do you measure success, and how do you measure the impact of that? And so we've had lots of really good discussions about that over the years. But one of the things that just to circle back, the inspiration on that came from that, and then we've just grown into 15 locations. So This last year we took on 5 more locations. We've expanded from Southern Alberta. We have a large area in Southern Alberta that we cover. And then we also are in BC, Saskatchewan, and internationally we're working with a group in Kenya right now.
Wow. But all that started here in Southern Alberta, just down Highway 3.
Just down Highway 3, yeah.
And so how does a church in Lethbridge decide to take on Western Canada and international? Like that, it's inspiring in a way, but that feels like an awful lot of work and sort of a big thing to take on.
Yeah, I think, so our pastor actually did write a book about it, and it's called Let's Take Our Job Back. One of the things that he's felt convicted about, and a lot of the team have shared this conviction, is that the church is really supposed to be that social arm of the government, that it started social services, it started hospitals, it started schools and universities and all these things that were birthed out of the church. And then all of a sudden, over history and over time, we've kind of stepped back from that. We've abdicated social responsibility in a lot of ways. And so this has been on our heart to re-engage with our communities, and it doesn't matter what community you're a part of, get involved and get your church involved in the community, because that's really what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And that's been a huge underlying passion and conviction for a lot of us, and just being like, all right, let's do this. How do we get engaged? What's the biggest problem in our community? So we actually sat down with the mayor last year, and we were like, what's the biggest problem? Actually, this would have been like, time flies. It's probably like 2-3 years ago now. But we sat down with the mayor and we're like, what's the biggest need in the city? And he was like, housing. And so we're like, okay, all right, I guess we're going into housing. And we have.
Well, you know, again, I'm a mayor in a smaller community outside of Lethbridge, and so we, you know, the thing I've noticed is that service clubs, never mind churches and religious organizations, but even service clubs are struggling to keep members, and it feels like we collectively have abdicated responsibility back to the government, right? Government at all levels is just going to take care of us.
Yeah, and we place blame there, and we're like, no, it's up to you. Like, you need to provide for our needs.
Right.
And so, like, we have a saying, let's take our job back. And so we really advocate, like, we share that message a lot and really try to inspire people to take personal ownership for their communities and being like, what can you do? There's always something you can do. There's always a neighbor to help or somebody in your school. And you don't have to start with something big. You don't have to like start a housing project, but maybe you can walk down the street to a neighbor who's struggling and help that single mom with their groceries or mow their lawn, or how you can, just do simple things that have big impact.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we had a structure fire in our community yesterday evening, which obviously is horrible and dramatic for that family. But the fire department was telling me all of our folks are volunteers. They're amazing human beings. But people were bringing them meals as they were working through the fire. And they're like, we're good, thanks. But people just want to be able to do something. They want to help. And how do we build on that sort of that desire, I guess,
yes.
in a way.
And that's really where a lot of our growth has come from. So we've, throughout the years, so in the first couple of years, maybe the first 1 to 3 years, we really were learning who we were and what we were doing. And then after that, we started to learn how to multiplicate what we're doing. So in a sense, I don't want to use the word franchise because we're not really franchising, but we learned how to take the model, and we've built master classes, we've built manuals, we've like spent a lot of time learning how to do social development around different things. And we've basically created packages. So like, say you wanted to bring to Sterling Shop of Wonders, I have a full package that you can take. And you can take it and be like, okay, Rotary, you want to do Shop of Wonders? Here you go, kind of thing. So we basically figured out how we could do that. And then in the last 5 years, we've been resourcing other church groups and service groups and people to basically take those programs and run with them.
Because, you know, I would imagine a barrier for a lot of churches, regardless of size, is they don't have the process, they don't have the structure. And if they've never done it before, it's pretty intimidating to take on a Shop of Wonders kind of project.
Totally. And like, we have varying sizes of that. So like, we have Shop of Wonders in Claresholm that looks very different to Shop of Wonders in Lethbridge. And even in, like we do, last year we had one in Shaunavon in Saskatchewan. And they all, like, some of them are more micro expressions, some of them like will do the full out kind of big giant toy shop thing, but everyone's kind of in their own process of that journey. And so we just work with them, equip them, train them. Sometimes I'll go out and do training with the team and just be like, this is kind of how you could set this up, because not everybody, I was trained in visual merchandising. So I like, to me, that comes really naturally. So I was like, all right, I can build you a setup guide. I can like teach you how to do it.
But not a skill set a lot of people have unless you've come from that space.
Yes.
Right.
And pretty unique, I think, to social services.
100%.
I don't think it's a normal thing by any means, but I really care about that. And I really care about our environments and how we do our programs. A lot of our programs are very experiential. So when you come in, it definitely... So Shop of Wonders would be a great example of this. Like, you come into Shop of Wonders and a lot of the families that would register for help, like, they may not necessarily know even what the program is, but they'll come in and we've taken a commercial space and we've decked it out to look like a toy shop. And there's like Christmas trees everywhere. I think our last tree count was like 52 trees, and like, it's kind of crazy. And so like, you come in and there's like people dressed up like Christmas elves, and they take them through and they help them get their Christmas gifts, and then they help them wrap them, and then they leave, and it's just a really good experience for the whole family. And so a lot of our programs are designed like that because we value choice, we value environments, and we know environments matter. Working in visual merchandising and marketing before, I know how environments play into even just how we interact with people, our psychology, and how the mood of spaces is impacted even just by your architecture or like the design of a room. So when we're designing our programs, I'm very intentional about that and just being like, okay, we want this to be a dignified experience. What does that look like? How do we make this even if it's I'm a very big over the top kind of person. So I'm like, how do we blow their minds?
Presentation
how
matters.
do we do that? Yeah.
So, for the benefit of our international
Mm-hmm.
audience or folks that aren't
Mm-hmm.
familiar, can you maybe explain sort of Shop of Wonders and
Mm-hmm.
what it looks and feels like? Because
Mm-hmm.
to your point, I think if you're seeking assistance, getting handed Christmas gifts because you can't afford your own is a very different experience than being able to shop
Yes.
in what feels like a very retail
Yes.
environment. So can you maybe sort of walk us through exactly what Shop of Wonders is?
For sure. Basically, we take a commercial space and we decorate it. We have like a host kind of like station at the front and hot chocolate and candy canes, and they sign up for their appointments and they come, so that it's not a big group of people all at once except for our volunteers. And they'll come in for their registered appointment, and then they basically have like this entire commercial toy shop to themselves, and it really does feel that way. They get to come in, they get to pick stocking stuffers for their children, they get to pick out a couple small gifts per child and one bigger kind of Santa gift per child, and they get to go through with a personal shopper, and they take them and they're hosting them the whole time, and they're learning about them and their family and finding out other ways that we can help them, and then they'll wrap their gifts and help them wrap their gifts if they want to do that. And then usually we wish them a Merry Christmas and send them on their way. And
for a very personalized
very
experience
personalized and very private. So they get to come in, they get to book their appointment. It's them and the volunteers, and it's Christmas magic.
No, that's amazing. And is it a bit of a launch point for referrals to other programs
Absolutely.
and services if required? So
Yes,
you can kind of
absolutely.
hear their story and be like, we can help them over
Yes.
here. Okay.
Yes, and it's very intentional. We and this usually happens more in the wrapping stage, because like you get a chance to be with the families and they're wrapping and you're talking, and then usually we'll have a chance to get to know their stories a little bit, what's going on in their life, and then if there's places that we can be like, okay, like it sounds like this is going on, can we help you make a referral to the food bank, or can we help you go into, like, if you're looking for housing, find a partner of ours that works with housing or any of those basic needs. And that happens pretty often, and many times, like, we have ongoing relationships with the families from just different touch points throughout the year, because we do a backpack campaign too in the summertime. So sometimes we'll see them in the wintertime, we won't see them again until the summer, but we always have like another opportunity to kind of chat with them and see how they're doing.
And yeah, you got to sort of multiple check-ins to keep track
throughout
of
the year.
progress.
Yep.
And, okay.
Yep.
So, I mean, I read that there's about 70,000 people that are helped across all of the different programs and services, which is like, kudos to you. That's an amazing impact across that many people. But what are some of the other programs? Like, let's talk, let's get into some of the details of what exactly are the offerings. Because to me, it's just an amazing inventory of things.
Yes, and it gets more and more nuanced every year because of how many different locations that we bring on. And so not every community needs a food program. Not every community needs a Shop of Wonders. So a lot of it is us getting to know the community and figuring out what fits best. But some of the programs that we do offer, we do everything from 24-hour emergency hampers, women's health and hygiene. We do clothing. We do a fair bit of clothing programs. So in Lethbridge in particular, and in Claresholm, Okotoks, Tabor, we have kind of like clothing shops that are free to the community. So we set them up like boutiques. People get to come in, they get to pick out stuff, and basically it's all free. They can get whatever basic necessities they need for them and their children, or whatever those needs are, like throughout the year. We have school lunch program. So in Tabor, we have Healthy Heroes, which is a school lunch program that we work with all the schools in Tabor. And so we provide lunches. We actually set up these fridges in the schools. And so we have a volunteer team that makes all the lunches throughout the week, and they go and they stock them in the fridges throughout the week. So it's a very barrier-free program for students that need just that extra meal supplement throughout the week for the students. We do, you got like all the questions today. Night to Shine. We do Night to Shine in February, and so that's in partnership with the Tim Tebow Foundation. That's like a big kind of prom event for individuals with special abilities. That's always a blast. Cinderella Project and our Tuck Shop. So that's for students that are graduating that need help with graduation. So they might need suits, they might need dresses, hair, makeup.
It's amazing how expensive to graduate is.
It's very expensive. Yes, very expensive. When you factor in your grad tickets plus like the suits, dresses, hair, all of that, like we're looking at like almost like $1,500 a student.
Right.
If the dress isn't like $1,000 on its own, right?
Yeah,
And we have an amazing, like, generous community. Like, our inventory is just like amazing. Like, there is like hundreds of dresses that we have donated from the community, which is just amazing.
Yeah, so that's sort of great segue to my next question is, how does this program get funded? So a lot of it is volunteer labor, donations of other things, but surely there's got to be administrative costs, there's got to be transportation I'm sure there's a long list of costs. So how do you fund all of this programming?
Man, passion.
and grit.
And grit.
Yeah. Okay.
Passion and grit. But honestly, it's mostly private donors. We've had funding over the years for varying programs. So like we'll get funding for like the school lunch programs or things like that from the government, but it's mostly private donors and members of our community.
Wow.
Lots of local businesses.
Yeah, and it's great to see that level of engagement and the fact that people, I think, are inspired by the work and just want to be a part of it, and like that's just amazing to hear.
A lot of our programs, we do very well with in-kind donations, so that like a lot of our programs utilize in-kind donations. So that's huge, and we always have an amazing response from our community from people. Even the businesses will put like donation bins in their businesses and collect donations for us throughout the year for varying programs and things like that, or the schools will do that quite often. So amazing support from the communities.
But there's got to be those times when you're getting ready for Shop of Wonders or Night to Shine or one of these big things, and you're like, okay, I know we were successful last year, and I know people showed up, but I sort of hope it happened. Like, are there ever those moments where you're like, I hope the bin is full?
All the time. It is like a daily.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely. And, like Shop Wonders is a great example here in Lethbridge. So if we were to have to purchase everything for Shop Wonders in Lethbridge, we had just over 1,500 kids this year. Some years we've had 2,000 kids, and it's about $80 a child to put through that program. So we're talking between like $80,000 to $120,000 just in toys, kind of thing.
And that's pre-tariff, pre-inflation.
Yeah, exactly.
Call it $100,000, right?
Yes, yeah. And that's not staff. That's not rental for a space. That's not any of that. That's just toys, kind of thing. So and that primarily comes in through the community.
Wow. Amazing. So I would imagine that that's part of what keeps you going, because everything you've described is partly your creation, and it sounds like a huge pile of work. So what keeps you going? Like, how do you stay engaged in this process? And I mean, just the challenge of keeping up with the demand.
It's a great question.
Back to grit.
Yeah. It's a great question. Man, I do think it comes back to values and like faith. And when you are doing something because of your value system, you just have, I think, this level of passion that you tap into. And I think as far as like both me and my husband, we've been in this for a long time, like, and we're both on the same page about it too. So that's really important.
I was going to say alignment
very
at home
important.
Is a key ingredient.
Very important for long-term sustainability. But that's really at the end of the day, like when things get tough, we're like, no, we're in this, and this is what we're supposed to be doing. And you just put the boots to the ground and keep going. And sometimes you have a bad day, and sometimes the bin's empty, but you just never know. You might go out there tomorrow and it's full now. So
right. Now you've been in Lethbridge since 2012, right? Was when you relocated here from much warmer places. So what keeps you and your husband here? Because we often are challenged, particularly in smaller, more rural communities, which Lethbridge is considered, to keep top talent here and retain people. You've been here now, 13 years. Yeah. Why Lethbridge, and why do you stay?
Man, you know what? And I'm sorry for anyone from BC that's watching. Like, I love Albertans. Like, I was born in Calgary, and we moved to BC, so I am an Albertan. And I was born here. But when we moved to Alberta, it was almost like we just found our people. Okay. Kind of thing. So, like, we're from the sunny Okanagan, but the thing about the sunny Okanagan is it's very touristy, and a lot of people who want to sit on the beach. And we were very active people, and so we were like, you know what, like, we were in a bit of a life change at the time and like looking and pursuing different career opportunities and things like that. And when we came to Alberta, we are like, people here actually have like drive. That sounds terrible, but like people in Alberta have drive.
Alberta is a very entrepreneurial
Yes,
place.
very
There's a lot of
entrepreneurial,
creativity.
lots of
Yeah.
drive. And it was like, you know, we found people that were like-minded like us. And we were like, this is
home.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
home. Mm-hmm.
Nice. That's great to hear.
Yep.
Now, if I read it correctly, you really didn't have any formal education as such in this space, right?
Not in this space.
So, you know, again, more background in merchandising than social services. You know, you've created manuals, you've created this system now that you can export these products and this knowledge to other communities, other organizations. So, how did that evolve? Because it sounds like you've become kind of an expert.
Lots of self-learning.
Okay.
I am an avid reader. I read, like right now I'm reading about a book a week, and it's been a journey. Anything that I'm curious about, I'll research until I feel like I know enough about it to almost be dangerous. But yeah, it's just been learn as you go. It's like learning through experience. We started it in 2016 with basically just like, let's trial and error. And then we learned and refined things. I invested a lot in mentors in the community, talking to business leaders, talking to different social service providers, sitting at the table with a lot of committees, many interagency meetings, plus reading, and yeah, just reading lots of leadership books, lots of books on social service, lots of research online on just what people are doing and how they're tackling some of these big issues in their communities. And just through that and yeah, learning as I'm going.
Well, and I think it's encouraging for people that out there that might be thinking, well, I can't do anything, I can't get involved, because go to your library, books are free.
Exactly.
And as long as you have an internet connection, there's an enormous library of resources, as well as some other garbage. But there's a lot of resources that are accessible, right?
Yeah, you can learn how to do just about anything online if you want to. It's just a matter of putting in the discipline and doing it.
Okay. So, I mean, I'd assume there's probably people out there in the audience thinking about getting into social services, perhaps in a formal way, or perhaps just in a community way. So, you know, beyond sort of the research and the learning, what other advice would you offer up? Like, what are some of the key learnings you've walked away through the pain, suffering, misery, trial and error?
Yeah, I would just say don't give up. I think it's very easy to be discouraged early on, and I know that's something that we face in when we start partnering with a new location, a new community. They're usually very excited at first, and they're like, I'm going to do this, and they start to hit a couple roadblocks, and they're like, oh, I don't know if this is for me. And so I think just being persistent, sticking with it, not stopping at the first, like maybe 5, 10, 20 roadblocks and hurdles and things that come up and get in the way. Like, you just push through it and learn from each of those things, whether it be a failure or whether it would be just you came up against something you weren't expecting, or maybe some unusual, like, you just never know, right? Like, it might be that they're having a hard time getting community support and donations, or having a hard time getting in, like, the schools or things like that. You just have to keep at it. And that would be, the number one thing is just don't quit too soon. Just keep at it.
Is there an example where you had a project perhaps, or you know, a thing that was just going sideways, or perhaps you thought like this is never going to land, and how that got turned around? Because I think people are, you know, they see the success of everything that you've done, and sort of this litany of great things and all the but have there been times where you were like, truly, I don't know if we're going to make it, like, I don't know if this is going to happen, and sort of up against that wall? Or is it always just sort of flowed because it's the right thing and the right time, and it's sort of inspired?
I think like some of that is true. I think we've had a lot of unusual early success in organizational growth. And things have seemed like it's kind of like the wind in the sails thing. Like, it just seems to catch and go. But there are times, and especially even I think in approaching bigger things like the housing project, you just don't know, right? And so like we've attempted 3 different housing projects. And the first one, most of the people on our housing team were like, you know what, like, this probably isn't going to work, but we're going to do it anyway because we're going to learn a lot. And so we pursued it. And then the second one came around, same thing. We learned lots. And now we're on project 3. And it looks like it's a go.
Okay. So yeah, the first 2 didn't come to fruition.
Nope.
Nothing was built.
Nope.
So as they
Just
say,
lots of
you
work.
either succeed or you learn. I
Yes,
think is the
exactly.
quote,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked a little bit about being on committees and being involved and listening to community and business leaders, which is sort of the whole reason I'm doing this podcast and this show is really to showcase community and business leaders. So, how do people get involved? Like how did you get to know the right places to be at and the right networks? How did you build that for yourself?
A lot of trial and error. I would say it wasn't, there was no particular rhyme or reason for like different initiating certain relationships, like right off the bat. Like there was a lot of organic relationships that happened first. So like once we stepped out, it was very natural for us to talk to our different partner agencies and things like that. And so like we definitely engaged with those stakeholders first. We did start to build more of our like business networking and join the chamber and those things like later on, and started to kind of more like branch out in that way. I wouldn't say it wasn't intentional. I wish it was. It just was the natural, organic kind of progression of those relationship
as you meet
buildings.
People, the nodes expand and
and it is very much about like those natural connection points. Like we had relationships that built on relationships and just like led to where we are.
Because my career advice to a lot of students to speak at the university and the polytechnic and in high schools a lot is you need to get out and meet people and network, and not networked because you're trying to accomplish something, but just to learn and listen and be exposed to other ideas and conversations, right?
Yeah, it's true. And the more people you talk to, the more informed you're going to be. And even if it's something that you don't necessarily agree with, and this happens regularly, I don't always agree with everything that I hear, but you're learning how to engage in that in a respectful and mature way. You're learning how to listen to multiple voices at the table and take that in, and sometimes it's challenging,
right?
And you're like, you know what, like that could be a valid point. I don't personally agree, but it could be valid.
And I think Southern Alberta is an interesting blend of faith communities, and so is that ever, is it ever a concern that this organization came out of Parallel Church and is attached to it, or do people just like, no, it's a faith thing, great, there's lots of other faith things and we move on? Like, is that ever a barrier?
I think early on there was a lot of trust building that needed to happen. I don't think like the church historically has done a great job engaging in social service like kind of stuff, and so I think it's been one of those things where it's like we're relearning how to engage with the community in like in today's world kind of thing. And like I said, like historically, like the church abdicated its role, and we're just learning how to like re-engage with that again. I think there's like a lot of trust building still to go and still to happen, but we hear that less and less all the time, which is good. And I think people see, like when they see our programs or they come and check things out, they have a different view and perspective on that once they engage with it. Yeah, because it's always, it creeps into public debates, and certain leaders, absolutely,
even politicians are accused of belonging to one faith or another, and our society is looking for reasons to divide and to polarize in some ways, right? And so it's like as soon as we can latch onto a thing. So I'm just curious if that was ever something.
Yeah, I think early on we definitely like would hear that more. It's been less of a thing over the last couple of years, and I think, and it's interesting because we're in so many different communities, and every community is a little bit different too. But I would say here, and like we're going into our 10th year of MyCityCare in Lethbridge, which is like pretty amazing.
Yeah, congratulations! That's a milestone.
It's a big one, and so that like I think for us, like we've spent a lot of time like building those relationships and trust here. It still pops up every now and again in new communities where they're getting to know us and what we do, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a good place for us to be, where we can engage in one of those hard conversations and be like, hey, this needs to look different. And like I hope that in the future you trust us.
Well, and again, we come back to this. We can have a dialogue. We don't have to agree. Like we're in this strange world where if we don't vote the same way or think the same way or go to the same church, it's like no, I can't even talk to you anymore. Like I feel like there's this division, right? And it's like no, let's chat and let's see if we can work through it. And if we can't, that's okay too. Yeah,
and we actually have like quite a few different faith groups even in the community here that are comfortable to like partner with us and be a part of what we're doing. Like even like recently we've been connecting more with the LDS Church, and they're looking into humanitarian funding for us and looking at supporting some of our projects and things. So I think there is good opportunities for people to be more collaborative and work together in that way.
Yeah, and the LDS Church obviously is quite strong in Southern
Yeah.
Alberta and has an enormous network and
Yes.
welfare infrastructure
Yes.
and organization behind it. So that's it'd be great to see a lot more sort of collaboration there, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that it only strengthens the community.
Right. Awesome. So what about it, for you, you talked about there've been some mentors along the way. Is there, you don't have to name names, but are there some key mentors that have stuck out for you, and perhaps just some of the key learnings or advice that you sort of were like, what did you take from that and how did it change the direction maybe?
I would say like the primary one, honestly, would have been our pastors. So Pastor Joylyn and Kelly Stickle here in town. They have been instrumental in our life, just mentoring us, and just their integrity and their character through all aspects of their life, from parenting all the way through to how they pastor. And Pastor Kelly coaches businesses, and like just learning so much from him over the years has been huge for both me and my husband.
That's cool. Very powerful, right? To have those positive influences and role models that you can emulate and to learn from.
Yep. And they're passionate people. They love people and they're fighting big causes. So Joy Lynn, she has an organization called Not for Sale. So it's an anti-human trafficking organization.
Right. Okay.
And so they do a lot of advocacy for that, and they work with schools, and they go and do just education and awareness events and raise funds for children that are being rescued from human trafficking. So
you've been quite involved with Not for Sale, right?
Yeah, I have been. This last year, I had to take a step back because we're growing, and I have to pick a lane, right?
Yeah.
Or at least this is what I've been told. But yes, I was on the advisory board for that for like probably 7 years.
Okay.
8 years maybe.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the scourge that is human trafficking. It's amazing to see that, again, local organization having a real footprint and making a difference there. Like it's very impressive to see.
It's huge, and people don't necessarily, not that they don't want to recognize that it's even in places like Lethbridge, but like it is.
It does exist, right?
It is, yeah. And I think just the more we can raise awareness and educate people and help them to see the signs, the more we're going to be effective in preventing it or stopping it before it happens. And then even for there's a home in Mexico that they support and stuff. So there is like children who have been rescued from human trafficking type situations.
So it's like a shelter / transition kind of home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to even imagine some of the things that they've been through and what they've seen. Right?
Yeah. And it's not an easy organization to be a part of, and you're hearing those stories and those things all the time. Imagine. But I mean, if we don't use our voices to advocate for things like that, and we don't bring awareness to them, and we don't share about it, then it goes unseen and unheard, and it's just that much easier for it to flourish. So it's opportunities like this are great because we can talk about it and shed some light on it.
And obviously you've been involved with a lot, and you've done some great things. Is there one project or program in particular that you look back on and go, you know what, I'm most proud of that? And not that you don't love all of your children in terms of all of your programs, but do you have a favorite child?
That's a hard one. I am a sucker for Christmas.
Okay.
Like, I am a sucker for Christmas, and I do love Shop Wonders. It is, and like for like a lot of reasons, and it's not about the toys. But I love the fact that so many families are struggling, and our family, even like when my husband and I were younger and we were in Penticton, he was working in the trade industry, and they were building all these apartments in Penticton, and there was condos going up everywhere, and it was booming, and then overnight the whole industry like died.
Okay.
And so everyone got laid off, all these projects, like even like 5 years later when we go visit, there's still apartment buildings that are
instant
finished.
crash
like
and
instant crash. Yeah. And there was all these families in Penticton that were laid off, and everyone was at social service places and asking for help, and we were one of the families that was sitting in one of the offices and filling out clipboards and being like, and basically they were like, well, you have too much money on paper to qualify for any support.
Right.
So we didn't qualify for any campers support or anything like that at the time. And I remember sitting in the office and filling out the paperwork, and there's like moms with babies crying beside me, and the floor is sticky and the chair was squeaky, and I'm just sitting there, and I was like, one, this is a terrible experience, which is where my passion for the experience comes from. But just sitting there and thinking, I was like, if we ever get the opportunity to do something to help people, it's not going to look like this. And when we started Shop of Wonders, it was our kind of second major program out of the gate.
Okay.
We basically we had started by doing Christmas hampers just in general, and we were packing toys, and I was like, I don't love that we're picking out the toys for the families. And I was like, if it was me, like I would love to offer the families a chance to pick their own stuff. So our team started thinking and brainstorming, and then I kind of had this picture in my head of like, like Home Alone 2, like Duncan's toy chest. So if I had all the money in the world, that's what I would do. It would be? Yes, okay. Yes, with the animatronics and everything, yeah. But I was like, yeah, like it'd be awesome to be able to provide them like this elaborate toy shop kind of thing. So it's not just even a toy shop, like it's the best of the best. It's fun, it's an experience. Like they're gonna come in, they're gonna feel, even if they're coming in and they're feeling heavy, they're going to feel hope and they're going to feel light.
It's Disneyland.
Like it's Disneyland.
Right? It's the memorable experience in and of itself. Yes.
And like my favorite comment from like a lot of families that will come through the door is like, they'll come through the door and they'll be like, am I in the right place? And I'm like,
yes,
yeah,
yes, you are.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. It's like, yeah, this is, and like a lot of them personalize it and they're like, did you do this all for me? And it's like, yeah, like,
yes, we did.
Yeah. And like we've been tested in that actually. Like we've had I always tell our team like we'll do it for the one. And one year we had done our Cinderella project, which basically we set up like this big like dress shop boutique kind of thing. And very similar, like we try to make it look exactly like a bridal shop. You come in, you stand on the pedestal, and there's like you're serving them like apple cider and doing the whole thing. And this girl missed the program. And her counselor messaged us and was like, I know this is late and you guys are cleaned up and stuff, but is there anything you guys can do? And so we were kind of humming and hawing about it. And I was like, you know what? We're just going to set it all back up.
Oh my goodness.
It was all put away in storage. And like I just sat with the team and I was like, you know what? Like we're going to set it back up because we keep saying we'll do it for the one. So we're going to do it for the one. And then we set it back up and she was able to come through with her counselor and she was the first in her family to graduate, like ever.
Wow.
And she worked hard to graduate. She was pregnant and her counselor was the only one there to celebrate her grad. And her counselor was there like in tears. And like, we'll never forget that because we, like you make statements like that and it's not just this cliche thing that you say. It's like you get chances to prove that you stand by those things, right? And so we were like, nope, we're doing it.
And did it not just for the one, but like knock her socks off,
yes.
Did it for the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be a pretty memorable, powerful thing for the whole team, I would imagine.
Yep, we still talk about it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
So, I mean, how do you... This show is called The Edge, and part of it is learning from community and business leaders about their success. But how do you stay energized, and how do you stay motivated in the face of like? There's got to be a lot to push through here. So how do you like protect yourself and sort of take care of you?
How do I take care of me? This is an ongoing conversation.
I feel like maybe that's still evolving.
This is an ongoing conversation. We've been like honestly like in the last couple of years really, and because like we've gone from like one location to like now 5 locations to 15 locations, and like last year we jumped from 10 to 15, so that's a pretty significant jump.
Wow.
So we're constantly reevaluating what those rhythms need to look like for us personally and how to keep ourselves healthy.
Right.
Me and my husband since the beginning of the year have been waking up at like 5 and cold plunging.
Okay, well, good for you. That's not something I will be doing, right? But okay. So cold plunges and early starts.
Yeah,
okay.
I actually am a raving fan right now of cold plunging. We've been doing it for 3 months and it's been awesome. But yeah, diet, exercise, all those things, like super important to stay on top of. If you're not going to do much if your body gets out.
Because you do have to take care of yourself to have energy to give energy, right?
Yep, and you're not going to be mentally as sharp. You're not going to be able to learn as much, like if you're not feeling well, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing for us. Like our physical rhythms is really big, and then we're just very self-growing. We're reading books constantly. If you know any good books, I'll take them.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're always reading, always learning, reading, listening podcasts.
No, that's awesome. So really nourishing body and mind, right? At the same time.
Yes.
Okay.
All the time.
So you talked about sort of housing being the greatest need and that being the next big project. We know that the economy is at risk in the near term with some challenges in politics. So, how do you see MyCityCare evolving and adapting to sort of the future challenges? I mean, you've already seen massive growth now of these 15 centers. Like, what comes next?
I think one of the things that we're looking at in this next stretch for MyCityCare is more micro locations or micro expressions of that.
Okay.
So we've seen a lot of smaller rural communities come forward and be like, okay, we might not need like a full outreach center, resource center kind of thing, but we have these like niche needs. We need a food bank, or a food pantry, or we need these support services in our small towns. And so we've actually found more small groups of people that are interested in small rural communities that are interested. And so I do think, like, scalability wise and stuff, working on a more like micro level on that has been really interesting and something that we're seeing more and more of. I think working within, for us, like one of the next things that we're working on is like a curriculum for schools.
Okay.
So we're looking at how do we start almost like not service groups necessarily in schools with students, but how do we activate students to care about their community? So we've been working on like a curriculum that we could run through the local school system where it's like leadership development, helping them identify things that are on there, like things that they care about at a young age. They say like around that 12-year-old, 13-year-old age is when people start to form ideas about what they want to do when they grow up. And it's like, all right, like for the ones that are like, and I was around that age when I started to develop care for our community. I was volunteering a lot at that age and like getting involved because I couldn't get a job yet. I was eager to get a job, but like I had to do the volunteer work first and build my resume.
So I can learn skills this way.
Build my resume. And so I volunteered like all over the place. And that's where like I started to develop like that heart to be involved in the community. And that's a big deal. And I think like getting that into our kids again and getting them passionate about that, and it's like, no, you can make a difference.
Yeah, because if you can engage and get them thinking about those things, that's something they'll carry with them, hopefully, into when they're employed and earning money. And
there's some interesting statistics too around like volunteerism and volunteer like age demographics and things. And so when you look at like the previous generation, volunteering was a very values driven aspect of life.
Right.
Like people are just like, I volunteer, that is what I do, kind of thing. You look at like my grandparents, like they were very involved in their community, very involved in the service clubs, and that was like a normal part of like life. And me and my husband have worked with youth for a long time. This last generation of kids, it is very much like the world is kind of revolving around them a little bit.
It is different.
And I have a teenager, and so I can say that from my own parental perspective. But how do we get them more engaged in their community, see the kid that's sitting across from them with no jacket in wintertime and have compassion for that? Or we had a story that I heard recently about a student in Tabor who he came home from school and his mom found out that he had used the fridge and he like didn't need to use the fridge. And so his mom was kind of getting at him a little bit and was like, you don't need to use that. Like you can bring food from home kind of thing. And he was like, actually, I do it because my friend needs it. And if I do it, it makes it okay. So then I go in and I have it. So then it gives him permission to basically come in. And it's cool if I do it.
Wow, there's a lesson there, isn't there?
Right? Yeah. And so it gives someone else permission to ask for help. And so helping our kids to recognize that and see that and be like, you know what, like maybe if we can just even engage in it in that kind of way,
right? Like
then we're giving permission for someone else to actually take what they need, right?
Yeah, because I'm keen to find ways to keep my grandkids on the right path and keep them engaged, and I hope they can make change in their own world that they're going to inherit here very soon, right?
Yeah, and it starts young.
So to that end, how do people get involved with MyCityCare? And again, there's a long list of projects across a massive geography. But where can people go for more information? How do they get engaged and maybe support this?
Yeah, you can go to our website. If you're interested in volunteering, you can go to our website and we can post the link maybe later, but it's mycitycare.ca.
Okay.
On the website, you fill out a volunteer form. It will let you choose different areas that you want to volunteer in. We do, for different programs, post different registration forms and things for that. But by all means, we would love to get. We're really trying to start a movement. It's much less about building an organization than it is building a movement. And so as many people as we can activate and empower to meet needs in their community, we want to do that. So even if you're like, hey, I don't know if I fit one of these boxes on the website, fill it out anyway, and we'll connect with you, and we'll see like how we can get you plugged in or involved. Because you might be working in social development or something like that, and you're like, hey, I don't know if I'm necessarily going to come and wrap toys at Shop of Wonders, even though I think you'd be good.
Yeah, you do not want me wrapping toys. It would not look good.
But we probably could use like things like mentorship and wisdom and advice and financial support or any of those kinds of things.
Okay.
So even though it might not look like you fit in one of the boxes, reach out to us and we'll get you involved.
MyCityCare.ca
yes.
is the website.
Yes.
So people can go there, they can fill in the forms, and it'll sort of get through an intake process and go from there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. Hard to believe we've been chatting for almost 45 minutes here. Any final thoughts you want to leave with our audience? Any sort of last impressions or advice or wisdom you want to nuggets you want to just shoot off into the universe?
Shoot off, man. I don't know. I think I just think when it comes to doing any of this kind of social work or projects, if you have something that's on your heart, just step out and do it. Like everyone's always waiting for like the right time or the right opportunity, or they're like, I'm just gonna wait until X, Y, and Z happen kind of thing. If there's something that you're like, man, this bothers me. Like I see this need in the community. I see like children like coming to school with no lunches, or I see like my neighbor kid walking down the street with no jacket and it's cold and I'm a parent and I'm like, why do you not have a coat on? And those things bother you, there's a reason it bothers you. And there's that, there is something and that passion that's inside of you that needs to come out. And so I feel like, yeah, if that's you and you're sitting there and you're like, I have this inside of me and I want to do something with it, I would just speak to that and say, just go for it. Just do it, because someone needs to step into it, and it's probably you.
Yeah, so if you have that twinge in your heart, if you have that inspiration, you just got to act, right? Whatever, what small, big, large, doesn't have to make a huge difference. Like you said,
and you might not get it right. You might you might learn through some things, kind of thing. But if you don't start, you'll never go and do it, right? You just gotta move ahead, and
Awesome. Well, that seems like a great place to leave it. Jennifer Tribble from MyCityCare, thank you for joining me this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next month when we'll talk to another community and business leader about ways to improve your community, improve your business, and improve your life. Thanks so much for watching.